MindSet podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lithgow. First off, I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. And I have my guest joining me, Drew Gregory. How you doing today, man?
Dude, I don't know how to explain how I'm even standing up or awake right now. It's been a crazy like holiday season for the family and I. We got sick, we had the flu, and then had to deal with that right over Christmas, the whole family. And then my wife just had surgery on her neck to have a little bit of a thyroid surgery.
Yeah.
So she's laid up right now asleep with pain meds. Got the little baby to bed. I'm kind of my son's at school, so I'm kind of this is a window we have right now to get this done. So let's make it happen
Yeah,
and let's have a good time and get my mind off of all that. Because man, I tell you what, I got to give credit to all the moms and the wives out there that are just taking care of the kids. It's a lot of work, and
absolutely.
they just run me ragged. So I'm excited to be talking fishing with you, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like me the last 2 weeks. Today was the first day back at school, and it's beautiful.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it, man. My
Yeah,
son just went back to school. Yeah, today preschool. He's three
yeah,
days a week, so he's at school. So okay, we don't have him to worry about. It's just the dogs or this little girl waking up or
yeah,
my wife needing something. But I think we're good. But yeah, school's good.
yeah. So I want to bring you on to start the year off, talking about the angler of the year. I wasn't able to get you on towards the end of the year. Um, so kind of, I know the little dilemma that you had with it, but that all got cleared up. I'm sure you already
hmm
talked about that in plenty of other podcasts. But last time we talked, you were back-to-back champion, and that
Yep.
was toward around, I want to say June, uh, close to
Yeah.
July, close to July. And you had a goal in mind to be the angler of the year at the end of the year, and you did it, man.
Yeah,
With
that's right. Yeah, it's cool. We talked about that on the show.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess I must have won another one after because I remember I went back to back to back like three
yeah,
tournaments in a row, which is crazy.
yeah. I think
I
you
still
won.
can't.
I think you
Yeah,
won the last one right when our episode dropped. I
right. So
believe.
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I went back to back to back, and then somehow won again on Pickwick at the end to kind of seal the deal with the Bassmaster. And like you said, I've talked about the protest and what happened and kind of cleared the air on all that
Yeah,
on other podcasts. But if you guys didn't hear about it, you can go listen to another podcast. But basically, it was just that people were wondering how I got to my spot without getting out of my kayak, which is one of the rules. Bassmaster and Hobie both have the rule you can't get out. And so I had footage from my GoPro and had to prove that and show the appeals committee. There's a 3-person committee that are not affiliated with the tournament, so they don't have any like skin in the game one way or the other. They just kind of neutral. It's like a jury. Anyway, that's it. I just proved it to them. I showed it to them, and I showed them some of the protest videos and photos they had of some logs and some shallow water. I was able to show them how I was able to just with hard work and practice, how I've learned to be able to attain is the word when you go upstream and either attain a rapid or shoal without getting out of your kayak or going around or under or around a log, finding the ways to do that with staying in your kayak. And of course, you have to have the mindset. So this is perfect, right?
yeah,
The mindset of that style of fishing, or you're not going to be able to do it. If you have a big, you're going down a creek and you got a big native Titan or a Jackson Big Rig or a Hobie or a big new canoe, something that's not made for that, then you're never going to, be able to do it. You need a small little, like I use a Crescent Shoaly mostly this year and sometimes the ultralight, but that's kind of the short version. I just had the right setup, kayak wise and just paddle wise, and then the right mindset and practice and experience on how to be able to do it to get through and around stuff without getting out. And, then just went and did it and found the fish and the tournament win. I guess it's one of these. Maybe this one got
yeah.
reinstated, um, and then that secured the Angler of the Year. So I think I'll be. I hopefully they did say they were probably going to use the classic stage to present that award, which would make sense. To have that on that stage to present the award to the Angler of the Year and the champion who wins the championship there. So I'm excited about that and super thankful to Bassmaster, thankful to Old Town who sponsored the Angler of the Year award. And, even though I work for a different kayak company and, use a different kayak, I think it's good precedent in our sport to always give credit and talk about other brands and other people, not not create these barriers and walls where I'm not allowed to talk about somebody else, some other angler, because they're in a rod and reel sponsor or boat sponsor or whatever. But so I did want to say shout out to Bassmaster on how they handled everything. And the Angler of the Year, like you said, it's pretty crazy to think that that was the goal I had set out, and I only had 4 tournaments to do it, and they took your best 4. I had to miss the first one because our little girl was born, right during that time, and she's still just a couple months old, had some NICU time and whatever. I didn't feel like leaving the wife yet, and didn't want to do that to her. So it was crazy to think that, man, that was my goal. I set out, I only had 4 shots at it, no mulligans, and was able to pull it off. So, man, I'm just super fortunate, super blessed because the talent in our sport is unreal in that tournament series. Some really good anglers. So super grateful and looking forward to see what happens this year.
Yeah, man. I know because we talked about it before you even went to the last year's classic, and then we talked about it after your wins, and that was your whole goal starting out last year.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask, what's this year's goal? You
Yeah.
crushed
Yeah. Yeah.
last year's.
Yeah. So that's a good question. And I'm glad we're going here because, in 2020, my goal was to get back to fishing after COVID was happening, and I moved the family up to Ohio. It was like, okay, I'm going to fish one of these Hobie tournaments. And I looked and I saw the Angler of the Year standings and the criteria. And I was like, I can only fish the last 3, but if I do good, I could have a chance for the Angler of the Year. That was kind of a goal. I know it sounds silly because there's like 8 or 9 tournaments. I'm fishing the minimum, but that was my goal. I was like, I want to set it high as possible. Who doesn't go into any game or sport you play, like obviously with the goal to win? I'm
Yeah, you
trying
have
to
to
win every
be.
tournament. It's
You have
unrealistic.
to.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not going to
Yeah.
happen, but that's your goal. So my goal was even further. I was like, okay, I'm going to win the Angler of the Year. I'm going to do as good as I can in these 3 and hopefully have a shot to win Angler of the Year. And by the grace of God, I don't know how, but because Russ and Jody don't miss very often, catching 5. But the TOC's in the fall, and it's very tough fishing. And that 2020 year, one of the days, it was a 2-day event. The first day, I think Jody didn't get 5, and the second day, Russ didn't. And I was able to win the Angler of the Year, and that was my goal. And then last year, same thing. Let's just try to go for the repeat. Well, I said last year, but now I guess it's 2021, the next year after 2020. And I was close. I was first in AOI and in KBF, and I was second in AOI, even closer because I was third in 2020 heading into the TOC. I was second in AOI and Hobie heading into the championship, and I was first after day 1 of the Trail Series Championship with KBF. And I've told this story, people probably heard it, but it's just still kind of fun, I guess, or interesting to hear because people forget about, people probably don't think about me having a good 2021. And I'm like, man, that was probably my best year because look where I was in those standings.
Yeah.
But my motor blew up on my way to my spot, for the KBF Trail Series Championship on day 2. And it cost me, everything, the 10 house, I couldn't get to where I was going. I was stranded a mile and a half out up there in a big solo skiff that you really can't paddle. It's, but so I fell out of that. And then Hobie, our girl came early and I couldn't even fish the TOC. I wasn't going to, miss, the birth of my daughter. So she came right during the championship. So it's always been the goal every year. It's like, let's see, getting to your question, let's see if I can get in contention for at least one of the AOIs, right? At least one. Yeah. And then last year I was able to do it. And then I ended up finishing 9th in Hobie in the overall standing. So not as good of a finish there, but still decent, of course, still good to be in the top 10 or amongst that crowd. This year, the goal is going to be, it's what people have joked about, or Cody and I, especially Cody Milton and I have joked about, is I have an AOI in Bassmaster and Hobie. He has AOIs in KBF and now Hobie. So we kind of were saying like, hey, who's going to get the missing piece first, And so he's got to get a Bassmaster and I would have to get a KBF. But so I don't know, man, if that's my goal is just to try to go for the KBF. But I think my goal really would be first and foremost just to try to repeat for Bassmaster. Because I feel like the Bassmaster series, I grew up with the magazine. Honestly, it's no shot at, KBF or Hobie or anybody else. Obviously, we all know who Bassmaster is, right? We especially my age group, I grew up with them in the magazine.
Everyone knows the name.
Yeah. And we love, what they've done, what they do. anyway, so that's got to be priorities to kind of try to defend that. So I'm going to try to fish all 5 of those tournaments this year, the regular season, plus the championship, which I'm obviously going to be in during the Classic on Lake Chickamauga. So the goal would be first and foremost, just try to do my best in the Bassmaster Series, repeat that AOY, defend it. And then after that, I'm going to dabble a little. I'm going to actually fish the KBF very first one down in Florida. I'm going to fly down for that one. I got a crazy plan where I've got someone driving my boat down there, actually getting it rigged. This is kind of an announcement. No one's ever heard this publicly. So I guess you're breaking news here.
Yeah.
If you got a drop, Chris, you can hit the drop right now. I love Motor Guide. They were great to me. I was, with them for about 5 or 6 years. But I've decided to move to Torpedo to do a stern mounted motor. And I just think it's going to give me a little more speed, be a little bit better in some of those river situations in shallow water, since you got the motor on the stern and it kicks up, and put a rock guard on it and stuff like that. The bow is like not forgiving. When you hit something with the Motor Guide, it's not forgiving. You just boom. And so the stern motor is the way I think I'm gonna go with this year with the Torpedo. I'm excited to join the team there, and Matt Ball and that leads the team. Jeff Little, obviously we all know the names, the big names that are all part of that team, with Jody and Russ, and and I don't know. There's so many people. I'm not going to get into listing them all, but I'm excited to see what that does for this season. And but it's going to help for sure in the Bassmaster and the KBF tournaments. The first one's coming down up in Florida, and then I'll dabble. Again, I'll fish the Hobie down there as well. Fly back home, and then I'll fly all my stuff. I'll leave there. My buddy's house, Dustin from Raccoon Creek Outfitters. He's got a house down there, and then I'll fly back down and fish the Hobie on the Harris chain. So at that point, it's kind of like, all right, yeah, Bassmaster's the goal. And then after that, KBF and Hobie, I can kind of just zig and zag, because, as much as I'd love to get a KBF as well, I don't think it's as high of a priority as it would be to just get another Hobie or another Bassmaster AOI. But if I start getting in the running, I do good down there in Florida.
Yeah.
I might push towards that KBF and see if I can't get Cody, get him on that. But obviously just blessed to be, back on the water, excited for a new year. And, what I've accomplished so far is man, it's already been plenty for me. I can't believe it's been such an incredible run. And hopefully I've been a little bit of an inspiration for folks that don't have all the money and don't have all the bells and whistles. And maybe they have a busy family life like so many of us do. They can't pre-fish a ton, and hopefully, I can keep inspiring some people along the same lines, because that's what kayak fishing to me is all about is, if you don't have all the money or you don't have all the time, this is something simple that you can get into and still compete at a high level even. So.
Yeah, it definitely, especially with your techniques and how you plan and everything. It's amazing how many times you're not really using the motor and you're catching most of these fish.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be harder this year. It's going to be a little harder with some rule changes.
It depends on the lake and everything.
Yeah, it's going to be hard with the rule changes, but that they're making, we don't know what those are really set in stone. But what's crazy is it would be harder even if there wasn't rule changes, because even though other anglers fish, they fish the way I like to fish, but I know that they, some people have won and done well maybe in some tournaments doing that, but it's not like every tournament's won this way. But I think that they're like, notice when someone wins 6 times, like I was, did this past year, even though I didn't win in that manner, like I wasn't, like I've mentioned, I was on the main lake on Grand Lake when I won. I was on most of my fish for Lake Champlain could have been caught with a bass boat, So it's not like I'm in some sneak hole, mythical creature that's out, somewhere
it's the pre-planning and then the ability to, with your strategy of how you pre-fish and everything else, that kind of puts everything together.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely it would have been harder though, because people see that success and they're going to emulate it. And if you have those skinny, small waters get too crowded with other folks, then nobody ends up winning from there. You cannibalize it. So the anglers have a way to kind of setting an equilibrium on fishing, which is cool, because, if a certain thing becomes hot or popular or area, then the anglers figure it out, and they like forward facing sonar, like A rigs, whatever. The fish adapt and the anglers adapt to what the winning stuff is. And when we're all doing that, that was kind of the deal. It splits it up, and the fish learn it no longer is the deal. And then you got to find what the new deal is. It's like constantly moving. But now that the rules are changed, and we're not going to be able to launch necessarily from all the public land or whatever the rules are going to be, that's unfortunately the equilibrium doesn't matter anymore. It's not going to level itself out because the rules are going to make it where you probably can't get to a lot of that water anyway. So, in some ways it's, kind of a bummer. I'm kind of a glass half full kind of guy, so I'll still go out there, have fun, and still try to get to some of that stuff if I can. But it's definitely fishing main lake and getting all the electronics and motors. As much as I'm going to love the Torpedo, it's not why I got into kayak fishing. It's probably not why 90% or 80% of the people out there got into kayak fishing. They got into kayak fishing to get away from all that stuff and just keep it simple. But that doesn't look like it's the way that our competitive landscape is shaping up at the moment. It could always change.
Yeah.
MLF just changed, stepped back to 5 fish. So at the moment, it looks like this year is going to be a little different, and we'll have to change that tournament preparation and strategy a little bit. And there's that book that a lot of people have always read, Who Moved My Cheese, that business book.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of that, but anyway, it talks about how it's always moving, that target's always moving, and it's moving again this year. So now how can Drew Gregory, who's known for, every once in a while find a little spot to put in or a little sneak hole that I can kind of get into with a small boat, how am I going to adapt and do, now that they've, made some rule changes that make it a little bit harder. Obviously, it's not like we can't ever get to that stuff, but it certainly will be a little bit more difficult or time consuming. And of course, when you get there and you make a long run and the Torpedo at 3, 4, 5 miles, whatever, you might have locals and kayaks or John boats or bass boats already there because you've spent a long time running.
Just get in there.
And then what do you do? I mean,
It's
not like you're a bass boat. You can just zip back real quick. It's like, dude, you committed your whole day to some idea, and somebody else just put in right by it because it was public property and they're not in the tournament. They just put in and are fishing there. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a conversation, to make a run or not to make a run, because, like you said, it's not as easy as a bass boat where you just pick up and go.
Nope.
You can't pick up and go, but half your days will be gone by then.
Yeah,
and then you're
exactly.
And then your emotional set in and everything else. Where do I have enough time to catch these fish? Do I even have a chance to win?
Right. And that's what was so cool, and what makes the kayak so awesome is that you can. That's why we like the kayak to fish a lake or fishery, because I mean, you don't have to make a run. You can just put in at your closest spot, and all the public land allowed you to really cover that whole lake. Well, now the lake's about to get shrunk. If there's like 8 boat launches or 10, I mean, people already were upset at how many people, how much pressure was on areas or how many people were showing up at their boat launches. No one loves that. Designated boat launches are going to shrink it because most people obviously just fish within a radius. 2, 3, 4 mile radius of a boat launch. So the lake's about to shrink for everybody. So, there's no doubt about that. That's going to cause that to happen. There's going to be more pressure in certain areas, more people launching from the same places. I hope not more contention between anglers because of that, because that's what we see in on the bass boat side of things. With, man, there's people all over my spot. There's pressure, so much pressure, and that's
Do you think you'll see a lot more people racing to spots?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's turned into the bass boat. It's the model of the bass boat tournaments, and it's not why I got into kayak fishing. But it's I mean, it's just a fact. It's nothing obviously against the tournaments and the decisions they're making. They have other things they have to consider. So I totally support them. I'm friends with all the directors and whatnot. But facts are facts. I mean, it's going to be a race now. It's turning into a race to your spots, and it already was to some degree. If you were launching at the same spot with somebody else and you both had the same offshore point or hump or back of a cove or wherever you were going to, but now anyone who's putting in it, these little places that were just maybe the only 1 or 2 people kind of put in at, but there was 15 of them around the lake. I mean, 15 times 2, that's 30 people that now have to 30 more people that are going to be condensed into the other launches. So and now it's just a race for sure. So in Hobie, it'll be a race with your paddle, with your pedal, drives, and Bassmaster, and KBF, it's going to be a race with your motors, which is, again, another reason I moved to Torquedo. So,
yeah.
It
sounds like it's going to be an interesting year, man.
Oh, yeah. It'll still be fun, man. Hey, it'll be fun.
I mean, anytime you're on the water, it's fun, though.
That's right. It is. It's not exactly the way I love to kayak fish or what I would, obviously love to see, but it's all good. I love to compete. That's the thing. I still love to compete. So even though, if I do it this year and it's not fun, if a lot of other anglers feel like it's not fun and they stop fishing or they fish something else, or maybe if that's the way it's going to be, maybe we just switch to bass boat tournaments. Because if we're restricted to basically all the same water that they are, other than, when you finally get back way up somewhere, you can get a little further than a boat, obviously, if you can get there. But if we're restricted mainly to that water, then in my mind, it's kind of like I'm toying with the idea of like, why don't I just get into a bass boat, go fish the opens, go fish the Toyota series, go fish. I mean, why not, right? I mean, and then I'll fish wild, fun rivers and creeks and stuff just when I'm fun fishing on the kayak. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, you got a point. Because at this level, you're almost your costs and everything. You're weighing that down along, especially at the level that you're competing at. Where I mean, the cost can't be that much different at this point.
No, I mean that. Sadly, this isn't why I got into it. I wanted to simplify fishing, but I mean, sadly, the forward-facing sonar and electronics and motors. If you're a guy watching this, I'm trying to just be honest and tell the listeners the truth here, but I want to help people out. I don't want people just to donate and throw away their money. But if you don't have, those tools and are proficient with them, they're even more important now than ever to win. I mean, they really are, because if you're constricted to main lake stuff, you got to kind of, or let's say it's predominantly main lake stuff. There's going to be tournaments where they do a good job of scheduling tournaments like, like lacrosse or Susquehanna, where it's a true, large river. So it is a true river tournament where those kind of, electronics and stuff don't really play. But on 75% of the tournaments with the new rules, you're probably going to be smart to either get yourself the fastest, vessel and motor you can, or, maybe just fish some local stuff, or regional stuff that doesn't have, those rules. Because until you get the money, because think about it, if all things are being equal and everyone has the same understanding and skill set to catch the fish, then who's going to win if somebody has a slower motor or a slower vessel and someone's got a faster? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, obviously, whoever it becomes more important. Whoever's got the electronics that, the pan optics that can really see what their fish are doing and learn them and become good with them. It's just going to be more important to have those tools now, in my opinion. So, which is going to be just a little bit of a different game. And basically, like I said, it's just like we're, fishing in little plastic bass boats, basically, and fishing bass boat tournaments out of little plastic bass boats that don't go as fast. You know what I mean? Which, with your podcast, the mindset, it's going to change the mindset for sure of what decisions you make. Because you also can't milk run. You can't load back up in your vehicle. I mean, you technically can, but if you load back up in your vehicle and you go and you put in at a different launch, like before, you could find some launches that maybe not many people had found, and it's going to have like one or two people might be there, or nobody, if you get lucky, would even be there. So you knew you could move to that throughout the day and still have fresh fish. But now it's going to be hard to go make a long run and come all the way back, or do a short run and come all the way back and then load up just to go to another launch that 35 people or 20 people just launched that morning and are all over all that juice. It's like, it just puts more emphasis on your original plan A for sure.
Yeah. So, do you think, I mean, I didn't even plan on talking about it, but do you think that now, because of the rules and everything, we're leaning more towards a professional series per se. As far as the top three, like where
Yeah.
you need the equipment, you need the right kayaks, you need the right stuff, just to be considered for a win or a top to finish top in there, like the top tens.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting question because to me a professional kayak series, kayak fishing has nothing to do with that, like the rules and that stuff. It has more to do with the entry fee. You know what I mean? Like if you kept the
Yeah,
rules, you can launch from anywhere, any public land or whatever. If they kept them like that, or you could port because you can't portage in KBF anymore. That's a new rule as well. So if you kept it where you could portage, or even if you don't, you leave it where you can't. But to me, the professional is more just about, you know, the entry fee and the
that,
payout being higher, and then if
that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Maybe I didn't word that right, but like to where like you don't even want to enter unless you have certain things on your kayak because you
right,
feel you don't have a chance to win that event.
right, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Is
Yeah,
is I think we're on the same page here. Is that if the rules did stay the same, and like let's just say assume they stay the same and people could launch wherever, a professional tournament, the cool thing about it in my opinion would be, yeah, you need to be really proficient with those electronics and those tools, you know what I mean, the motor and electronics. If you're a main lake guy, or if you're not a main lake guy, or if you're just a guy that can do either one, kayak fishing water, the skinny water that the kayak was designed to go into, right? That connects to that watershed, free flowing without a dam, obviously, where the fish and the shad and the bait fish all move up in there. The fish, the bass move up in there. The professional side for me would be like, just in general, like leaving all that open would be cool because then it's like they're so good with that with electronics, and that's only getting better. You know what I mean? That's all. You're only going to get better at catching fish on the main lake with the way the electronics are evolving. So leaving the other open as well would be the coolest part of a professional trail, because if you don't, then it just is a bass boat tournament out of a kayak that's slower. A little mini bass boat that's slower. With electric, it's electric only.
yeah,
But if we left it all open, to me, a professional tournament would be so cool because then the guys that are really good at the skinny water, backwaters, creeks, and the certain lakes where that plays. And there's certain times, of course, it doesn't play, like in the winter, like you don't see somebody in the back of some little creek that's flowing in much colder water. You know what I mean? So it's like going to be like, how do the pros solve this giant puzzle? That a kayak can go in the skinny water, in the offshore water, it can handle it all. But how do they? So really, it's just like obviously a bigger entry fee, and you need all the electronics and the motors and the tools to be the best at offshore stuff and main lake stuff, not just offshore, but the docks and the main lake fishing. And then it'd be cool if you could still just sometimes win with just a paddle and dropping in at some little sneaky spot. And the pros that are the best would be your Jacob Wheelers, your Brandon Poliniks of the kayak fishing world. The ones who would be the best would be like those guys who can do it all. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
they can fish super skinny and shallow. They can frog. They can skip a swim jig under a dock. And then they can also turn right around and be the best at the electronics and forward-facing sonar. The key decision then would be like when to do what. You know what I mean? But if we leave that ability to get to some of the other water out of it, the kayak only water, which is why so many of us obviously got into the kayak to begin with, to be in the kayak only water where the boats don't
For so
go.
long, that was the selling point.
Well, yeah, that's what
For so
people,
many
for sure.
years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it is an inspiration for people that don't have a lot of money, that you can think about it like this. If you're because forward facing sonar is allowed and all the electronics are allowed in a BFL or Toyota series tournaments, or all those AAA level bass boat tournaments, or your local bass boat club on your Thursday night or on your home lake, it's all allowed. So if it's all allowed, I mean, unless there's some that maybe have a rule that it's not, but if it's all allowed, think about it like this. If you're a youth golfer and you're a kid that didn't come from a lot of money, but golf technology and the clubs and what they can do is so incredible. It's like fishing, right? If you have the most expensive golf clubs, they're more forgiving. The sweet spot's bigger. You're going to get more distance. You're going to if the talent is, if the actual physical and mental like talent, the mental and physical talent are equal between those two young men, the two junior golfers, and one of them has the best clubs money can buy, and the other one's playing with clubs that are 8-10 years old. I mean, it's a kind of rhetorical question. We know who over the course of 4 days of golf, 72 holes,
Yeah.
a golf tournament, a 4-day golf tournament, however long, we know who's going to have the odds to win, who will most likely win more often than not because they have the better technology and tools. So that's the saddest part. Again, it is what it is, but that's just kind of the truth. The sad part is I felt like we were getting so many people into the sport from, hey, look, you can still compete both ways. The cool thing about the kayak is it's diversity. You can do all the electronics that bass boats you can do. They can do the motors, obviously not gas, but it can do the motors and still. I mean, a torpedo can push you 7 miles an hour. You can still move, but you can also choose to go this way. If you are that kid who doesn't have a ton of money and can't afford all that stuff yet, you're not like at a disadvantage necessarily. You just gotta fish certain water. You're kind of limited to certain water. It's not always winning water. And I got to reiterate how hard it is to win in that stuff. I know it looked like I had this incredible year or whatever, but and I did, but it wasn't all in that kind of water, and it was very hard. I mean, very, very hard. And if anybody else would have showed up at any of those places, which, like I said, would be the trend. If no rules were changed, the anglers would level the whole thing out. The equilibrium would totally get leveled out because there'd be more pre-fishing pressure in those skinny waters, and that messes the fishing up for the tournament. So even if it's not, hey, you're going to show up with 2 or 3 people, it's the pre-fishing pressure could set you off,
Yeah.
But more than likely, the more people that kind of got into it and seen some success I had, and it probably gets blown out of proportion just because if you look at all the tournaments throughout the whole year, even though it was one guy, it wasn't like that many that were one in that style, and Lake Fork's not getting one like that. Lake St. Clair, where January, February, March, April, like it's not happening there. But it once the summer hits and the fall when it plays more, and that happens to coincide with right at the end of our season where rule changes are talked about, I think it kind of boils to the head a little bit more. So anyway, back to what we were saying. I think that is to me kind of like a bummer because, and I know people out there are going to say, well, you don't have to fish tournaments, and this is just part of the competitive side that's going to have these rules, and you can still kayak fish wild places without a motor and without electronics.
Yeah.
But to me, having that as part of our sport was cool because it's the essence, and it is part of, that's how kayak fishing got its start. So having that, be a player, in the competitive side and be a potential winning method, it kept the essence of the sport in the, why would we not want the essence of the sport, the way the kayak fishing started and how it boomed? Why would we not fight tooth and nail to keep the essence of kayak fishing in the competitive side of kayak fishing? Because in my opinion, that's kind of like, think about a sport that has a couple of different styles, like race cars. You got pavement, they race on pavement, and they race on dirt tracks. Or volleyball, you got beach volleyball and you got hard court volleyball. Well, it'd be silly if the beach volleyball people said, you know what we need to pack this sand down really hard, okay? Almost like make it like it's a hard gym floor. And then we should require everyone to wear shoes so they can jump higher now. And then it'd be like, but we have that. It's over here. It's hard. We have bass boat tournaments hitting the main lake and covering. It's the best tool for the main lake. Like kayak fishing was special because we were able to highlight what kayak fishing was, all about. So anyway, it'd be like dirt track, the same thing. It'd be like, hey, why don't we pave this dirt track instead, make it something like, whatever, millings or something that's different. I don't know. It's closer to hard pavement. It's like, but the dirt is what makes it cool and different, what makes it fun. That's what we want. We want to slide. We want the mud. That's the sport. So that's kind of the only, takeaway, and kind of from a sports perspective. I studied sports management, in school. And so I always look at things a little bit different from like a 30,000 foot perspective. And to me, that was like that is kayak fishing special sauce, the ability to, because if you have a $20,000 kayak setup with all the electronics and motor and power pole and everything, you still have the money for a $500, $1,000 paddle kayak for when the situation arises to use that. You know what I mean? That strategy. And, um, you know, it's, again, it's not like it's all taken away. I don't want to be like all doom and gloom, because it's not. And I'm, like I said, going to still compete and love kayak fishing, but that kind of, to me, was why I got into the sport and why so many of us did. And it was our special sauce that made us unique and different. And it's why Toyota did an article with me this year. You can go on bassmaster.com and read that. It's, the title of it was 4x4 something. And it was just about, they were excited, man, like about, this is so cool. And kayak fishing, you can put in all the public land, like the same way you would, kayak fish on a weekend, just find some public property on that watershed, put in, and fish, and then get out and you use your truck. Like every once in a while, even kick it in four-wheel drive and use your truck and drive around. So your truck is actually part of the sport in the middle of the sport, like not just to and from, like the bass boat world, it gets them to and from, but then, they launch every day, and once the tournament time hits, it's just their outboard and their trolling motor, and that's it to get them around. But the truck and the non-endemics like that were more crucial to our sport when it was the way it was. And like I said, you can still move, ramps now. They're not saying you can't do that, but it's not going to be as much of a player if you just, common sense will tell you, you don't want to launch, 3 hours later at a spot that 20 or 30, 40 people were just launching from. So, but yeah, exactly. So we'll see how some of those, some of those things change and how it changes sponsorships and, and just the whole landscape of the competitive side of the sport.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting because it's going to take. I think it might take some of your people who are thinking about doing tournaments and take them completely out just because they feel they don't have enough equipment.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely is going to happen. I would think on the one hand,
your normal people will always be there. Like the
yeah.
people who you see every single year, they're always going to be there. And they're always going to adapt to the conditions.
Yep.
But the guy who can only do one or two, professional tournaments or higher tournaments might not be as
right
opposed to want to do that.
Right.
That's how I feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see a lot of bass boat world people move over. It's going to take some of the overflow from their tournaments into our tournaments, and there is overflow there. But like tournaments are full, like the Bassmaster Opens and all those, they have more people on the waiting list. You know what I'm saying? So people might just look and say, "Well, I still want to fish somewhere and something," and they might move over. But to me, the opposite. That's not growing the whole sport. You know what I mean? That's not bringing a new person into the sport. Whereas if kayak fishing was kept the way it has been, where it's been looked at as, in my opinion, it was and still can be. Again, not that they can't ever change the rules back or whatever, but I saw it as the soccer of the fishing world, in the sense that all you need is a ball. And that's it, man. It's like simplest, the cheapest sport, and it's no surprise soccer is the most popular sport across the world because of that right there. Well, the bass boat world, I mean, let's face it, if you're going to try to compete at any sort of high level, you're looking at, 50, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 setups. We needed a soccer. You know what I mean? We needed something to help get something that low barrier to entry to get him in the sport, the competitive side of things. And so kayak fishing to me had that appeal for sure, to be able to get people into the sport, see that they had a shot to win, even with just a paddle. I mean, they're still at a disadvantage, you know what I mean? Like, most of the time, again, I'm like the outlier, and I know that rules and I know I don't know. They've mentioned my name on some of the podcasts. So I don't know if rules were changed because of me or whatever, but I know rules were changed because of, Ott Defoe using a tunnel hole or Roland Martin using a ladder, and can be a compliment. I don't know. It's what Chad said. And he's always kind of messed with me about that, because I've never broken a rule. I've just, used the rules and kind of found anywhere I could and place that I thought I might have an advantage in a paddle kayak. You know what I mean? So, that's the thing.
You went inside. You went with the rules and found places that best suit your fishing style. Basically.
Exactly. Right. So So that's kind of, I guess, that's all I've done. I mean, I didn't do anything no one else could do. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
if you're playing within the rules and you do something that no one else was doing within those rules, it isn't wrong or a bad thing. As a matter of fact, that's a great thing um, for the coverage of the sport, because those are exciting stories. Like, for example, Jason Christie going 60 miles or 70 miles, however far it was, up the Sabine River. You were allowed to go as far as you can go in that bass boat. And he had his motor synced up to his Garmin, which told him his fuel mileage and all that stuff, and how far he had left, and like how many miles he had left, and the efficiency of the motor and everything. He had it dialed in, and he went where no one else was, but he was within the rules. Everybody else had a choice to go there or not. He just found it, you know? So obviously everybody's always had a choice and the ability to simply just go get a paddle and $1,000 kayak, and go there, but they didn't, and I've been on plenty of those situations where I did, and it doesn't work. You don't win, it's just a lot of times the skinny water, unfortunately, has a lot of like fewer fish and smaller fish a lot of the times. And most of the times I would say actually, compared to the main lake fish that are feeding on those big forage out there in the main lakes.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing. It's just that that to me was, and hopefully we can, because see, when you're taking overflow from the bass boat world, or people who just, you're not getting, because they say to themselves, well, I was already spending $30, $40, or $50,000 on my boat, oh, and this kayak over here, I can get it fully rigged out and even pocket some money if I sell my bass boat, and I can still win just as much money. If you've seen the payouts, trust me, you can win just as much money, because you always got to subtract the entry fees to those other tournaments, like the $1,800 for the Opens, or even look at the pros that fish the NPFL, the Bassmaster Elite Series, MLF. Look at their yearly earnings and then subtract, the 35 grand they put in for entry fees. And you'll soon realize that, myself, Russ Snyder's, Cody, Christine, probably Guillermo, whoever, people that had a good year this year in the kayak fishing side made more money with little $200.50 entry fees. We actually made more money than most all those guys. And they're going to figure that out, and they're going to want to jump over here, pocket a little money. And then the only thing that doesn't do that's, and you add, motors and electronics are definitely going to become more important. So the people that are already into the sport fishing and they're already into the sport, buying rods, reels, they're already consumer. It's not new money, if that makes sense. It's not a new person. Those people are going to potentially upgrade and buy a faster, motor or a better electronic setup. The thing I have from a business perspective, from the overall fishing industry, that I would love to see is, the new people get into the sport. And that's where the rule might, like you said, might make it where some people just kind of look and say, I don't think I can compete. You're that junior golfer that just doesn't have the money to compete against the other guys who, instead of getting into and being a part of the sport, at least, like, even though you're not buying the motor or a Hobie or a pedal drive native or Jackson or whatever, even though you're not doing that yet, we got them in the door. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got them in the sport. And once you're in the sport and you love it, you fall in love with it, you realize, like, man, this is cool. This little $1,000 kayak that kind of got me started, and I had a little success. Like, you're going to be like, I really need a motor. I want to go I want to go faster and further. So then you've got a new person in the sport, and it's not a motor that was bought from somebody that was already in the sport, buying all the equipment for the sport, rods, reels, line, whatever you want to list. It's like new money. So that's why, from a business perspective, that being the soccer of fishing and a sport that, at the highest level on the bass boat side is the most elite sport of pretty much all sports. It could be right up there with quarter horse racing or polo, or I don't know, man, like the high end, like, I don't know, race. It's like, you don't just, who's got 80 grand just laying around to, like, But anyway, bringing those new people in is what can grow and what kayak fishing can do, I think, for the sport of bass fishing and fishing in general. Getting new people in the door, it's like minor league baseball games have empty seats. They tell people it's free tonight. $1 tickets to get in the door, so they buy popcorn and peanuts and sodas. Getting somebody in the door for a business is the hardest step, and we kind of made it a little harder. I think we're making it a little harder on the competitive side of things for people to logically. People aren't stupid, like, we're to take. It's just a little harder for them to take that first step. I think to compete. But it is what it is, and we'll see how it affects things. And I'm still going to go have
Yeah,
fun and do my best and see what happens.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's still also local leagues and local trails and everything that
Hmm.
people could use to get involved before they jump into the higher
Right.
trails and stuff. So
Exactly. They can.
there's still ways to get into the sport without having to pay the higher entry fees
Yeah.
per se.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And
Um,
they can, still probably. I mean, I don't know. Well, unfortunately, the rules probably are going to. The highest
they, they
levels affect the
they
rules
always
usually
trickle down.
down. They always trickle down. So they're probably gonna. Yeah, they can still buy an inexpensive boat, but if they're gonna looking at getting into the competitive side, they're probably gonna be hit with some of these rules here, and then not. I mean, how do you just go out there launching from a launch of 50 people with a paddle and see someone flying with a pedal drive and then you know we're not
It,
people aren't dumb and realize you're kind of at a disadvantage. So um, yeah, it's gonna.
it would discourage some people for sure.
Yeah, I just hope it
But
doesn't discourage people to get out.
unfortunately,
Yeah, to
yeah,
get out of the sport completely. Because I think maybe it's part of the hope, or I don't know, but you know, people might think, well, okay, maybe that encourages people, or it encourages them or forces them to realize that and then buy the more expensive stuff. But to me, that's where it's like that's not the way it should be. They'll buy the more if we get them in the door and they have some success and a chance. Like I always like to say that the tournaments, if you go back and look at the history of all tournament data, 33% are won like offshore, meaning not on the bank, pretty much, and 33% are won on the banks of the lake, the main lake banks and main lake coves, and then 33% are won in what I would call kayak only water. A boat could never get there, which
yeah,
is the perfect level of diversity. Perfect. Like there was no problem. And maybe it's the squeaky wheel gets the kind of grease. And people, unfortunately, people today with social media or online, and they just, you know, people get frustrated or upset because they feel entitled. If you spend a lot of money on all that stuff, that you should never lose. You should never lose to someone that has, you know what I mean, like a quote unquote inferior or less expensive setup. And I hope we're not knee jerk reacting to, just a group of folks that are frustrated at that, because right now, for the overall health of the sport, that the diversity that we had in the wins, if you go back and look at all of them, it's incredible. It's just incredible how like the stories that creates, like what's going to win. Is it going to be main lake bank, this real shallow backwaters? Is it going to be offshore? Is it going to be the skinny creek or river? From a future perspective with a television cameras, thinking about all that, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool story, that you
yeah,
have to tell, and those stories, like I'm saying, because people are saying or have said, I've heard them say on some podcasts, like, it's almost like somebody like, or even my protest, it was kind of like, man, we just don't feel like he's catching all different species of bass, the Alabama spotted bass, than most of the Lake Pickwick fish, and it almost feels like he's in a different body of water, And to me, that's what's so cool, is that you can find, each body of water has little pockets of different species of bass that kind of hold in this area or that area, or the store. Like when you think about the Bassmaster Elite Series or whatever, when somebody runs out of the Sabine River and they go through the salt water up Galveston to Galveston Bay, or Winona Bay in South Carolina, they go down saltwater up into the Cooper River through Charleston. When people do this cool, wacky, like I said, Jason Christie's, story,
yeah.
John Cox right below Rodman Dam on the Ocklawaha River catching 30 pounds. He's way back up in there, and he probably took him some time to get his aluminum boat up in there. Or even someone in St. John's River that locks into Rodman Reservoir. I mean, the precedent's set, even at the highest level of bass boat fishing, that it's okay and it's a cool story to not even feel like, quote unquote, you're on the same body of water, as long as everybody has the opportunity and can see
Yeah.
and understand the boundaries in the map to go make that run if they want, or go into Rodman Reservoir. It's called the St. John's River Bassmaster Elite Series, not the Rodman Reservoir or Crescent Lake or all Lake George or all the other lakes that are there, right? But that's all part of their playing field, which is so cool. And there's no doubt we'll be a little bit more condensed now, but that to me was the cool thing about the stories and the media coverage and what would make our sport, especially when it's on TV one day, exciting. Like, how's it going to get won? And look, I'm not. This is hopefully it's not like a Debbie Downer because I believe
Yeah.
those skinny waters are going to they're still going to the backwaters and skinny stuff is still going to come into play, and it will,
Yeah.
and we still can get there. We just can't get there the way we used to get there when we were just the way we all kayak fished, a fishery. You're going to find the closest public spot to put in that's legal in public, and that's why would you not? You don't have an outboard. Why would we start from? Why would we all go on a casual day of fun fishing? Why would we start from 6 miles away when we could put in a mile away? You know what I mean? Publicly, and so
Yeah,
and
so
then the
that always goes into your pre-fishing and your game plan normally.
yeah.
How close can I get to this launch spot that I
Oh,
actually
for
want to
sure.
fish?
Oh, exactly. That's part of the strategy,
Yeah,
because you want the kayak anglers to be able to fish the entire fishery, not have to look at a whole section of the lake and say I can't fish it, I can't pre-fish it because I can't get there. That is not cool because now we're at if anything in kayak fishing, you should have more water available to us and be able to be in play, not less. Like Champlain's a good example. You even have more water there um, than the bass boat guys do because they conceivably actually cannot run gas. They don't have enough gas. They can't get all the way down to the south end of the lake from the north side. So in the kayak fishing tournaments, we could actually get everywhere. But you want that to be the case. And the reason why you start from one spot in a bass boat tournament is at a local level, not so much at a high level, but because they have officials on everybody's boat that watch them catch their fish. But at local and regional levels and anything that's not the top level, the reason why you launch from one spot obviously is to check the live wells because you keep the fish alive. So you need to make sure everyone's live wells are checked, that there's no fish already in there for them to cheat. And we don't have live wells. So, that there's no need to launch from one place because of that. And, I don't think anyone's checking, like if there's 10 launches at a lake, and we'll see what they do with the rules. They might, but if there's 10 or 15 launches on a lake or 8, however many there's going to be, if there's not a representative from the league there checking everybody in, then how do we still know someone isn't off somewhere else just launching and fishing? You know what I mean? So in other words, a rule always has to solve a problem. They launch from one spot in a bass boat tournament because they're solving the problem of there's not going to be fish alive in the live wells that were pre-caught. We can check your live wells and then you guys roll out. In our situation, we just got to, see what are we trying to solve? You know what I mean? Because people, even if they launch from actually launch from the designated launch, they could paddle off, go right back after everyone else leaves, load back up and move to another launch. But they could go somewhere that's illegal. You know what I'm saying? And still, so, maybe it'll help the tournament directors with a lot of questions they were getting or confusion from people that just couldn't, I feel like if you can figure out and understand all the stuff there is on electronics these days, you can probably understand what's public or private land with a simple Onyx app or far wide, stuff like that. But maybe it'll save them from some questions from folks like that and some that are just confused. If they're that confused, that's why I'd argue if you just made the entry fee $1,000 or $500,000, and the people who are paying that are those who they understand like what's public, what's not, and how to read that stuff pretty easy. But anyway, maybe it saves them some questions like that and frustration from that they've had. I don't know if that's been going on, but maybe it does do that. But then again, how much more time and work is it to build a map and find all the launches and you know what I mean, like get permits or whatever you got to do, and that may be different now. That's going to take a lot of time building a launch map and stuff like that. So it could balance out to the amount of time they were spent answering questions if there were a lot of questions about that. So they're obviously doing it for a reason. So you gotta back your tournament directors and support your trails, and that's even though, and it's okay. Like this is a good conversation we're having because even though I would love for it not to be like that, and not just for my style. I mean, I love to fish that way. I'm still gonna get to some of that stuff and do that. I got the resources and connections, fortunately, to get sponsored by Torpedo, and obviously I have that. But oh shoot, just lost my train of thought. What was I saying, Chris?
you're saying
Oh
it's a good reason for
yeah,
us to be talking.
Yeah, no, it is. It is because it's okay to disagree. Is what I was saying. Like,
Yeah,
even though I've got all the resources, I'm still going to get to the water I want to get to. Um, but we live in a culture these days that it's like people just can't disagree and be okay with that. Like, you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like, I love our trails and I love the directors and so what? I disagree with one little, I have a different opinion or different viewpoint because I want to keep the kayak and kayak fishing. I mean, I want us to really be able to still keep that essence of our sport in the competitive side of the sport. Not for me, for my style. Trust me, it's not for me. I can catch fish on the main lake, no problem. It's because I wish everybody would have the opportunity to fish those cool remote waters that got me hooked on the sport. It's for everybody else, not me, because I'll get there and I'll figure out how to catch them on the main lake, and that's fine. But it's really for the sport as a whole. You know what I mean? Like that's what it's really more for. And it's okay, that we disagree or have a different opinion. That's totally cool. Because those guys, all the trails, and they do such a great job. I mean, just overall do an amazing job. I ran a trail for 8 years. I know how hard it is. It's so hard. It's not easy because you do have to deal with the people who are, maybe frustrated or upset at something. And maybe it is because for their own personal uh, gain, you know what I mean? Or their own, uh, whatever for to their own advantage, and maybe they're complaining or whatever. But, you just don't see the other way around. It's funny how you just don't see people. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't know it. But I've never heard people say, let's take away live scope. This doesn't seem right. Or let's take away, motors, or let's take away, or it's not safe to be letting people fish out past half a mile offshore. It's not safe in a kayak, even though people are flipping and we're putting tournaments on, busy lakes in the middle of the summer, or Lake Erie or St. Clair. We don't really limit that offshore fishing, even though you could argue that's not safe. You know what I'm saying? And from a
yeah.
kayak, you
Sure.
could say, well, bass boats that they kind of have enough events on that. They're the better tool and it's safer. It's just funny. You don't see the people who are fishing the skinny water saying, let's ban all that stuff, or let's make that. I think the diversity, like our diversity, is what makes us so great and so special. And I just wish that diversity could be kept in the sport, because unless something is overwhelmingly, like the A-Rig's a good example. They thought it was just going to win every single tournament. So we got to outlaw it, because then you wouldn't need any other baits, lures. Like it would hurt the whole commerce of the sport, the whole economy of fishing sport. It would make it boring. There's no more stories.
Yeah,
It's like so-and-so is going to go over there, throw an A-Rig and win. Boring, right? And you know what I mean? Like I guess that's what it comes down to is the diversity and the storylines and the different ways you could win a kayak tournament were so broad, so grand. You could do so many things, and now it's shrunk big time. And I know I'm pretty close with a lot of riders in the sport, a lot of people that cover the sport media of bass fishing overall, the bass boat world. Not really, I mean, the kayak world too, but I'm talking about the bass boat world that some folks I'm really close with. And I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to like out them. And it was kind of off the record. They didn't want it to be known that they said this, but they actually said to me, I mentioned that, whatever. I've mentioned a few of them, like, hey, we might have some rule changes this year. It's going to be different, so we'll see. And I told them what they were, and they were in shock. They were like, dude, that's what made you guys different. That's what made y'all special. That's what we loved about kayak, is hearing those cool stories and the different things people did and the creativity that you're allowed to do, all the creativity. Because in the bass boat world, again, it's off the record. And I can't talk about who they are, but there's definitely a huge contingent in the bass boat world that's frustrated with how far the electronics are going and what it does to the TV product. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking down just at a graph, and of course I got into fishing to be away, unplugged from electronics and the world, to be in nature. And so now it brings it back to like electronics and, machines and whatever. So basically they're sitting there and they're just, I mean, everyone knows you'd much rather watch a lacrosse Wisconsin tournament and see a bunch of blowups on a frog than a smallmouth tournament where they're just sitting there looking at the screen. It's like, I got one, and these guys who didn't want me to like mention their names or whatever, ever. That's why they said, make sure it's off the record that they feel this way about the sport they cover and they love. They just said, the worst thing you could do, man. They were kind of sad. They were like, dude, the worst thing you guys could do is mimic the bass boat world. That's like the worst thing you could do. And again, their words, not mine, but I'm just saying, like, they were definitely in the camp of, dude, keep it beach volleyball, not hardcore. Like, we have that, and we have the best tools for those lakes, and it's already on a TV product getting worse. And our sport's not, their sport isn't, the bass boat world, unfortunately, is not growing. And the reason why it's not growing is because we've filled up the inventory. What I mean is, there's only so many lakes, right, around the country. They're not making new ones. That's it. The fisheries are the fisheries. That's it. So if the sport of, golf or soccer, football, you name it, if it becomes more popular and continues to grow, what do? All we do is just go take some land and build more courses, right? Build another field. Those sports can grow at an unlimited capacity. Bass fishing is unique. It's different. It can't grow to unlimited capacity because we only have so many fisheries. And by the time it gets overpressured and you're out there with your buddies and you're fighting over the same spots and the same holes, and you realize this just isn't fun, especially given the amount of money you got to spend in the sport. And for those boats to get out there, you realize it's not fun. I'm out of here. The only inventory we had, the only place we have to grow to help grow the whole sport of kayak fishing was these unique places the kayaks can go. You don't need a 40,000 acre fishery or 25,000 or 70,000 to have a tournament. You can have an 8 or 10,000 acre fishery plus the rivers and creeks that feed it. And that's plenty of water for 200 kayak anglers. But now and again, it's not like we're saying that you can't go. People aren't fishing those out of kayaks for fun still. But the sport on the competitive side can't really grow now into those as easily. You know what I mean? That was the inventory that the sport of fishing, the bass fishing sport, had to really, really push into. And tours and departments that have never had anyone knock on the door and say, hey, we want to throw 200 people into your community. How do you feel about that? Because they never get that knock from the bass boat world because their lake is only 12,000 acres. It's not big enough. Not big enough for that many bass boats. Yeah. But dude, you put in the rivers and creeks, or even what's really cool about kayak is like how KBF did the national championship in Shreveport, or, you got 5 different lakes to choose from all around the city, or even the chain of lakes in Florida, Harris or the Kissimmee. Some of them aren't even connected by canals that we're allowed to fish, but it's like this is your playing field. Doesn't matter if it's the county, just the county lines, the border of a county. If that county is the paying county, it's like any public water in that county, those rivers, those public lakes, the 2,000 acre public lake, and that little 50 acre public lake, all the playing field. Go. That was cool. That was cool. Being able to say that and go and do stuff like that too. And we still can. It's not like we can't still. I'm not saying we can't, but it seems like we're, I think we're limiting ourselves a little bit on where we can grow and how we can help the sport of fishing and the fun we can have. Cause it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about having fun. And we all agree, I would think we all agree, having fun is, having catching more fish, catching more bigger fish. And how do you do that? Well, one way is having less people to compete against, less pressure. And these are the other fisheries that aren't getting as much of the marketing and notoriety because they're not, the big ones that pay the big bass boat tours to go there. So we don't hear about them, but we expose them every once in a while. We have a good decision, and our trails are really good about that. I will say kayak fishing is really good about going to some new places and exposing a Possum Kingdom, right? Or a Trinity River. Remember the record? It was like, what was it? Jody and Guillermo had like 109, 111 inches over there in the Trinity. Or what's another? Like the Susquehanna is a great example. That was like, wow, this is amazing. Now it's a staple in our, yearly schedule because it was kind of, it's big enough to hold this many kayaks and whatnot. So exposing and going to those kind of different places that already haven't been saturated by the bass boat world is definitely a way we can grow into that new inventory that just opened up through the kayak. So We'll see. I'm sure we'll do it more and more, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
Well, we got a lot of smart guys. Smart guys are working those trails, so trust me, we'll keep seeing new and more stuff. But they can't. There's a balance because they got to go to these big names because everyone knows those big name places, and so it kind of draws some people from further away because they've heard of Guntersville.
Yeah, well, for like Guntersville, like the names that we all hear,
Yeah.
It's a chance for someone to go to the lake and possibly win some money. Go to a lake that they've always wanted to go to and possibly come back with some money in their pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Your Lake Forks, your Lake Chickamaugas. But the reality is those lakes have, I mean, Gunnersville's back now, but they have some serious downturns. Kentucky
Yeah,
Lake, and we still go there and we know about them because of the marketing to us through the bass boat world. But there's an OHIV for every Lake Fork that we know about. There's an OHIV, or, you know what I'm saying? These cool places that nobody has ever gone to. No one's ever exposed in the mainstream. And there's over, I want to say 100 and something lakes in the country that are 8,000 acres or more. There's 100 and something of them. That's a lot. So anyway, but yeah, man, the mindset will be different this year for sure, and I'll
yeah,
have to zig and zag, make some new
yeah.
changes on how I do things. But it'll be fun. Just another challenge, and that's all it is. Another challenge.
Oh
You
yeah.
got any? What else you got for me? Anything else?
Well,
What else you want to talk?
we've been going for like an hour, so
Yep,
we'll save it for after Florida. Maybe we'll get you back on, talk
I
more
love it.
about it after you got into a tournament or two. But any closing thoughts? I mean, we covered a lot more than I
Well,
thought we were gonna cover.
I mean, yeah, I know, yeah, for sure. We just kind of got
Yeah,
into so well. It's kind of a natural. It's the
yeah,
talking big buzz right now, anyway. And but I mean, if you want to wrap with a short conversation on, we've talked a little bit about your mindset's going to change this year
yep,
in kayak fishing, but I'll do a few predictions. I think I've kind of hit on them a little bit, but I think the mindset this year with kayak fishing tournaments, from designated launches where you have to assume obviously that it's going to condense people a little bit more. Like I said, your electronics focused anglers who can really dial that stuff in, offshore anglers who are really good at that, finding something that's to themselves offshore, which is what we all were doing in the backwaters anyway, just trying to find some fish, that are unpressured that no one else has found. That's going to become more and more important, I think. And then the motor will become in the boat, the motor and the boat. It's got to get paired with the right boat to give you maximum speed. Will also become more important this year. And then another thing on the mindset, your whole mindset with how you approach the season, what's going to be, I think, even more important this year will be looking at that schedule. Once you put it in your spreadsheet or whatever you got, your list of all the national tournaments and the dates, I think your decisions on where to go are going to be just huge this year. Because if you are an angler who wants to fish any backwaters or skinny water, if you see the tournament info sheet and you see what the launches are, you might realize, hey, this one's just not going to be for me. You know what I mean? I can't. It's going to be 6 or 7 miles just to get to that little backwater, or 3 miles, or whatever it is. It's too far for you. And with the watercraft you have and the money you have to not, maybe you can't afford a super fast motor or whatever, or any motor. You're just going to have to zig and zag. And now the good news is there's what, like 9 events in Hobie and 9 in KBF and 5 and then All American. You got other series out there. You got a lot of events to pick from. So if you look at all the launches and how they're going to use their launch rules or whatever it's going to be, you can probably still find enough tournaments, because you already know that your lacrosses and your Susquehanna tournaments like that are like the Wolf and Fox last year for Hobie. They're kind of river events anyway. So if you kind of are a river creek guy, then you can at least fish those, and you can kind of cherry pick some ones that might be a little better for some of your style if you only have a paddle kayak and want to fish that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be something different. Do you have any thoughts on what people's mindsets will be this year? What will be different with given these rules?
I think it'll be more pre planning, more of looking at maps before you even get there, and kind of still looking for like the diamond in the rough type of feeling where it's like, okay, well, this is where most of the people probably will launch. This is where a few people might launch.
Right.
Maybe I'll just go to a place that has less people launching there and try to find something there instead of trying to beat the crowd out.
Yeah. No, you're right. It could. The other areas might get cannibalized. It's like Banana Cove on the tournament for the Harris chain last year for the Elite Series. It was just loaded with anglers, and they kind of all eventually cannibalized themselves. They did well, but I think Buddy Gross won that tournament, and he wasn't far from there, but he won it finding something that nobody else found. It was a little different, but it was still kind of close to that, and that's what it's going to take. You have to find either a launch. I know that's some people's strategies are like what you're saying. A tournament winning spot is only tournament winning if it's yours alone and 10 other people aren't there with you, or 2 or 3 aren't there with you. But it turns into a great spot, a tournament winning spot turns into just a good spot when the pressure shows up. But a good spot with nobody else there, like you're saying, that the least amount of people at the launch, and you happen to find something within that launch with the least amount of people, so nobody else is there or whatever, that becomes not just good, but a tournament. I mean, it becomes great. It's a tournament winning spot at that point. So that kind of stuff's going to change for sure. You just kind of have to predict where the groups of people are going to be, where you hear all the buzz, all the dock talk. You got to figure out where it's all going to go down, and then maybe try to go somewhere else, or just be the best of that group, which is what happened at the TOC. Brian Nelly and Nolan Miner and all those guys, that was the winning area. You could not, it'd be very hard to win it anywhere else. And they were the best of the group out of that area. They found the juiciest, little spot within the spot, So that's going to be the fun part this year, is trying to figure out how to, because you can't, if you make a long run, you're going to be very confident that when you make that long run, it's going to pay off. You know what I mean? It's got to have to, because if not, you better have a backup plan that's still within that same launch on your way back or something, because that takes a lot of time to go like 4, 5, 6 miles one way and then all the way back and then load up and then go to a whole other part of the lake. So that kind of milk running is with those, like I always used to say, the Tacoma outboard, that kind of milk running is over.
Yeah,
I think so. We'll see. It'll be fun. Like I said, I'm pumped about the year now that I've had a little break and kind of I've been looking at maps, like you're saying, and doing more research, and it's becoming, those decisions are getting more critical. So I'm excited to get back out there, and just, again, huge thanks to the trails. They're doing such a good job. They're coming together. They're unifying stuff, which we've always asked and wanted from them. And that's a step and a positive in the right direction. I'd rather see more love and unity in the sport. That's why I think a lot of us got into kayaks, of course, is you meet a lot of really friendly and good people.
Yeah.
And even the people, what's cool about kayak fishing, even the people that you may not agree with, we all kind of get along really well, and we have different takes or different opinions on things. And it's like, it's okay. It's just part of life. I can still like be your buddy and respect you, and don't have to like hold everything so like personal, and have harbor hatred that people want to just do all the time in this day and age on the internet, like that. You can't have a difference of opinion without it, meaning you're just at odds, and it's just not the case. Like, so it's good to see that we're coming together a little bit, the directors, and just, they've done such a great job. So it's such hard work, man. So I'm excited to get out there and see all the other anglers and see those directors, and thank them again, more, hopefully on stage some this year again. We'll see.
Yeah, man. So is there any sponsors or anything that you want to throw out there, or social media?
I just switched. The only thing I'll say is, my sponsors are all staying the same. If you guys follow me on social media at Drew Gregory Fishing, I've had a big hiatus because how busy I've been with the family over to Christmas, and it's the only time we have.
I believe we all have, man.
Yeah, so good. That's good to hear. I've just been I haven't posted anything really, but if you guys want to follow, I'll be getting back into it. But I did want to say that Realtree Fishing is my official sponsor again this year, my headline sponsor, I should say. And then, so huge shout out to them. They support a lot of this sport. So I hope you guys, and they get it. So I hope you guys can turn around and support them, of course. And we put our money back into the brands that are helping us. But then the other thing I was going to say was another new sponsor is Torqeedo, which I mentioned. And then I also mentioned a new battery sponsor, X2 batteries. I'm going to be using them for my my graphs, and just automotive battery, my Tacoma battery, whatever. They make batteries for all different purposes, marine and automotive and everything. but they also are sold. The cool thing about X2 batteries, and I was with Lithium Pros before, and they were great. I never had an issue with their batteries, and batteries are kind of something that they're kind of all, as long as we just want them to work, as long as they don't, like, as long as they work, they're good. But what I like about X2 is that not only do they work, but they're easy to get. From you guys listening, if you just go to a Batteries Plus store, they're sold into the Batteries Plus stores, which is a chain all over the country. So you can go and buy those batteries. They're great, and they support the kayak fishing community. So you don't have to go to some specialty marina or whatever, or boat dealer or whatever shop to get this special battery. And it's a little easier to get that battery, and actually owned by Batteries Plus as well. So basically we have a big non-endemic that's they're really supporting kayak fishing and what we're doing. So that's kind of cool, man. So I'm excited to have them on board, and looking forward to a good year with those guys. And everything else, just follow along. I'll be filming everything again. And I won't announce this now, but I do have a plan for all my footage from last year, and it's going to be pretty exciting. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll maybe announce it next show or something.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, thanks, buddy. I appreciate you and what you guys are doing, and let's get on and do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Always. I appreciate the conversation, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Have a good day.
All right, see ya.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You could support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jig Masters Jigs, win